Immigration expert warns Chinese illegal aliens using Canadian city as gateway to U.S. Ongoing shifts in U.S. immigration policy have intensified scrutiny and sparked controversy across multiple fronts. From covert illegal crossings at the northern border to courtroom clashes over deportation procedures, the landscape reveals growing tensions and systemic challenges. If you are interested in this topic, please pay attention and watch the video through the end to get all the information. Please hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to push the notification bell for an upcoming video. An immigration expert says that the flow of Chinese illegal aliens into the United States could largely be supported by the Chinese community in a Western Canadian city, and that the Chinese Communist Party is likely using known Canadian smuggling routes to sneak operatives into the U.S. As southern border crossings have ground to a virtual halt, the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, Mark Krikorian, shared his thoughts on the continuing flow of Chinese illegal aliens from the north. It will be logical if they're trying to come across the northern border instead, he told Fox News Digital. And there are lots of Chinese people in Vancouver. I mean, there's this very large Chinese population, Hong Kong population, etc. Krikorian said the Chinese population in Vancouver is not so much teeming with spies, as it is a tool that serves as cover for potential Chinese bad actors looking to cross into the U.S. Whether they're regular criminals or whether they're People's Liberation Army operatives, or who knows what, a Chinese community gives them a medium through which to move where they're not alien, he said. It's kind of like one of Mao's sayings, Krikorian said. The people are like the sea and the revolutionaries are like the fish. In other words, they use the people as a sea through which the revolutionaries swim. According to data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the number of Chinese nationals caught crossing into the U.S. via the northern border so far in fiscal 2025 is 4,042. The total in fiscal 2024 was 12,414. The fiscal year closes at the end of September, meaning that the U.S. is on pace for fewer crossings by Chinese nationals this year than last. It would make perfect sense that the CCP, would use pre-existing Chinese communities and networks as the medium through which they get into Canada, and then it's kind of jumping off point to get into the United States, Krikorian said. Krikorian said potential Chinese illegal aliens enter Canada in various ways, including through student visas and tourist visas, would allow them to be in proximity to the U.S. border in the first place. He also said he believes smuggling routes are well known to Chinese officials, and that the smuggling is facilitated by local CCP allies. A lot of them must be hiring smugglers, just because if you don't know the ropes, how do you know where to go and who to talk to and what part of the border to sneak across? He said, it's harder than it looks. Krikorian said he does not believe there is currently a grand conspiracy to send groups of Chinese spies into the U.S. via the northern border, especially because of the Trump administration's stricter policies on border security. An operation like that, he said, would more likely occur with more relaxed border policies, like the ones during the Biden administration, and that the CCP is patient and calculated enough to simply wait until America's borders are open again. However, he said it was unfathomable to think that China would give up on exploiting America's border weaknesses or using pre-existing smuggling routes they have used in the past. I think the main thing is just people coming for dishwashing jobs, like regular illegal aliens, he said. But if there's a flow like that, the People's Liberation Army is not stupid. They're going to salt it with people they're going to want to use in the future, whether it's saboteurs or spies or what have you. Does anybody think the Chinese Communist Party is stupid enough not to have taken advantage of this opportunity Biden gave them? No. H-1B visa and green card holders from India targeted in the U.S. immigration crackdown wave. President Trump's second stint in the White House has put many Indians in a peculiar situation. The Trump administration has been coming down heavily on the immigrants living in America. The illegal immigrants are being identified and deported, while many legal migrants are also facing action from U.S. authorities. The Indian diaspora, too, has been a part of the ongoing immigration crackdown by the Trump administration. Indian green card holders and students from across India studying in the U.S. are feeling the heat in the ongoing immigration storm initiated by Trump. Indian H-1B visa holders who are employed in some of the top U.S. companies are also caught up in this immigration crackdown. Recently, USCIS selected 118,660 unique beneficiaries, resulting in 120,141 selected registrations in initial selection for the FI 2026H 1B cap. Social media reactions started pouring in by accusing Indians of having grabbed all the 120,000H 1B visas for 2026. Many Americans on social media are calling for the termination of the H-1B program. Some call it a conspiracy by big tech companies to hire only Indians. There have been cases in the past where companies have been caught abusing the H-1B selection process. H-1B non-immigrant visa program allows U.S. employers to temporarily employ foreign workers in specialty occupations that require highly specialized knowledge and a bachelor's or higher degree in the specific specialty. Indians are present in nearly every business sector in the U.S., including doctors, engineers, and CEOs of top U.S. firms. Indian skilled workers receive 72.3% of all H-1B visas issued between October 2022 to September 2023. H-1B visa holders were always looked upon as job seekers who were taking away American jobs. Many top voices in America have called them low-wage indentured servants. Sri Ram Krishnan's appointment as an AI advisor to the Trump administration led to a surge in anti-India sentiment on American social media, with a viral video showcasing an American man obtaining Indian signatures to curb H-1B virus spread. Even Indian students in the U.S. are facing concerns about their future due to the H-1B backlash, including campus racism and social media attacks. India sent 331,602 international students to study in the U.S. in 2023 to 2024, a 23% increase over the previous year. The current crackdown on overseas students by the Department of State and Immigration and Customs Enforcement has had a disproportionate impact on Indian students. In March, Secretary Rubio said that DAS had canceled over 300 student visas. According to a recent release by the American Immigration Lawyers Association, Indian students accounted for 50% of reported cases from a sample of 327. Also, there were reports about Indians being forced to surrender their green card by the U.S. authorities. A green card, officially known as a permanent resident card, allows an individual to live and work permanently in the United States. There were reports that Indian green card holders, particularly elderly individuals who spend winters in India, face intense scrutiny at U.S. airports in March. Overall, the negative sentiments towards Indians seem to have emerged in recent times. U.S. immigration chief mistakes key legal term at Congress hearing. U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem on Tuesday misstated the meaning of habeas corpus, the right of a person to challenge their detention in court during a Senate hearing, claiming instead it was the opposite. Noem, who oversees immigration and customs enforcement and plays a key role in implementing President Donald Trump's hardline migration agenda, was questioned by a Senate committee regarding comments made by White House advisor Stephen Miller involving habeas corpus. Miller on May 9 said the White House was looking into suspending habeas corpus, which would prevent migrants targeted for mass deportations to appeal for their right to appear in court. Maggie Hassan, a Democratic senator from the northeastern state of New Hampshire, asked Noem, "What is habeas corpus?" Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country, to suspend their right to. Noem responded before she was interrupted by Hassan. Habeas corpus is a legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people, Hassan said, correcting Noem. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is a foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea, Hassan continued. Noem rephrased her response, saying, "I support habeas corpus," but said the president has the right to decide whether it should be suspended. Nevertheless, Noem said the Trump administration would comply with any court ruling on habeas corpus. Trump has made deporting undocumented immigrants a key priority for his second term, after successfully campaigning against an alleged invasion by criminals. But his mass deportations have been thwarted or slowed by multiple court challenges. including by the Supreme Court, often on the grounds that individuals targeted for deportation should be given due process. Unquestionably in violation, judge says U.S. government didn't follow court order on deportations. The White House violated a court order on deportations to third countries with a flight linked to the chaotic African nation of South Sudan, a federal judge said Wednesday, hours after the Trump administration said it had expelled 8 immigrants convicted of violent crimes but refused to reveal where they would end up. The judge's statement was a notably strong rebuke to the government's deportation efforts. In an emergency hearing, he called to address reports that immigrants have been sent to South Sudan. Judge Brian E. Murphy in Boston said the 8 migrants aboard the plane were not given a meaningful opportunity to object that the deportation could put them in danger. Minutes before the hearing, administration officials accused activist judges of advocating the release of dangerous criminals. The department actions in this case are unquestionably in violation of this court's order, Murphy said Wednesday, arguing that the deportees didn't have meaningful opportunity to object to being sent to South Sudan. The group was flown out of the United States just hours after getting notice, leaving them no chance to contact lawyers who could object in court. Government attorneys argued that the men had a history with the immigration system, giving them prior opportunities to express a fear of being deported to a country outside their homeland. They also pointed out that the judge had not specified the exact time needed between notice and deportation, leaving room for misunderstanding. The government calls the deported people true national security threats. The migrants' home countries, Cuba, Laos, Mexico, Myanmar, Vietnam, and South Sudan, would not take them back, according to Todd Lyons, the acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, who spoke to reporters in Washington. He later said the migrants either came from countries that often do not take back all their deported citizens or had other situations that meant they could not be sent home. These represent the true national security threats, Lyons said at a news conference. Behind him was a display of photos of men he said had been convicted of rape, homicide, armed robbery, and other crimes. Administration officials, who have repeatedly clashed with the courts over their attempts to deport large numbers of immigrants, made their displeasure clear Wednesday. President Donald Trump and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem are working every single day to get these vicious criminals off of American streets, and while activist judges are on the other side, fighting to get them back onto the United States soil, said Tricia McLaughlin, a department spokesperson. She pointed to the photographs and described them as the monsters that Murphy is trying to protect. Homeland Security officials released few specific details about the deportation flight. They said it left Tuesday with 8 people on board and said they remained in the department's custody Wednesday. Officials said they could not disclose the migrants' final destination because of safety and operational security. The case comes amid a sweeping immigration crackdown by the Republican administration, which has pledged to deport millions of people who are living in the United States illegally. The legal fight is the latest flashpoint as the administration rails against judges whose rulings have slowed the president's policies. Lawsuits on immigration issues are everywhere, with Congress largely silent or supportive. Opponents of Trump's agenda have filed hundreds of lawsuits and judges have issued dozens of orders against the administration. Immigration has been the most contentious issue. There was a mistaken deportation of an immigrant who was living in Maryland to a prison in El Salvador, as well as Trump's push to swiftly deport alleged Venezuelan gang members without a court review. The administration officials insisted that the deported men had received due process, but did not provide details. Immigration rights attorneys argue they violated Murphy's order, first handed down in March, that says people must have a chance to argue that going somewhere outside their homeland would put them in danger before being deported, even if they've otherwise exhausted their legal appeals. The government is still refusing to provide due process to our clients, which means they are not giving them notice of the country to which they're being deported, proper notice in a language that they understand, and not giving them a meaningful opportunity to claim fear based on those countries. Trina Realmuto, the executive director of the National Immigration Litigation Alliance, said outside court, "These are countries that the State Department doesn't want Americans to travel to. They are categorically not safe," she added. In court, Realmuto asked the judge to return the individuals to the United States. "They are no less deserving of protection than any other human beings on this planet," she said. The government argued the interviews with the men over their fears could be done where they are currently being held and confirm with Murphy that they can be arranged. Real Muto called this a logistical nightmare that penalizes the men because the government violated the judge's order. She said it would prove a challenge to get the men legal counsel and interpreters, an effort complicated by the time difference. Murphy, who raised the prospect of criminal contempt for anyone involved in an illegal deportation, later Wednesday ordered the government conduct a new set of interviews with the migrants if an appropriate place with appropriate privacy can be found. He said the government was welcome to bring the migrants back, but did not order they do so. On Twitter late Wednesday, DHS McLaughlin called the order deranged. The countries of origin vary. Attorneys for the immigrants told the judge that immigration authorities may have sent as many as a dozen people from several countries to Africa. The apparent removal of one man from the troubled Southeast Asian nation of Myanmar was confirmed in an email from an immigration official in Texas, according to court documents. He was informed only in English, a language he does not speak well, and his lawyers learned of the plan hours before his deportation flight. They said, a woman also reported that her husband from Vietnam and up to 10 other people were flown to Africa on Tuesday morning. Attorneys from a National Immigration Litigation Alliance wrote, Murphy, who was nominated by Democratic President Joe Biden, previously found that any plans to deport people to Libya without notice would clearly violate his ruling. South Sudan says it's unaware of any arrivals. South Sudan's police spokesperson, Major General James Monday Anoka, told the Associated Press on Wednesday that no migrants had arrived in the country, and that if they do, they will be investigated and redeported to their correct country if found not to be South Sudanese. Edmund Yakani, executive director of the South Sudanese Group Community Empowerment for Progress organization, questioned why people convicted of crimes in the United States would be sent there. Is South Sudan a land of less human, who deserve to receive perpetrators of human rights violations? Without any public explanation, he asked. Some countries do not accept deportations from the United States. That has led the administration to strike agreements with other countries, including Panama, to house them. The U.S. has sent Venezuelans to a notorious prison in El Salvador under an 18th century wartime law, an action being contested in the courts. South Sudan has endured repeated waves of violence since gaining independence from Sudan in 2011 amid hopes it could use its large oil reserves to bring prosperity to a region long battered by poverty. Just weeks ago, the country's top UN official warned that fighting between forces loyal to the president and a vice president threatened to spiral again into full-scale civil war. The State Department's annual report on South Sudan, published in April 2024, says significant human rights issues include arbitrary killings, disappearances, torture or inhumane treatment by security forces, and extensive violence based on gender and sexual identity. The Homeland Security Department has given temporary protected status to a small number of South Sudanese already living in the United States, shielding them from deportation because conditions were deemed unsafe for return. NOAM recently extended those protections in November to allow for a more thorough review. The U.S. is one of the biggest donors to South Sudan's humanitarian aid programs, with the total funding in 2024 standing at over $640 million. As the U.S. tightens immigration enforcement, international communities, legal experts, and human rights advocates are sounding alarms over due process violations, rising discrimination, and diplomatic rifts. The intersection of policy, politics, and legality continues to shape the immigration debate, raising questions about justice, national security, and America's role as a global destination. That is all for today in this video. What are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the entire video. Hopefully, the information is useful to you. See you later in the next video. Till then, take care.
US immigration webbios. Chinese illegal immigration to the US is increasingly routed through Canada, particularly Vancouver, leveraging local Chinese communities and smuggling networks possibly supported by Chinese Communist Party affiliates. With tighter controls at the southern US border, many Chinese nationals enter Canada legally and attempt to cross the US northern border, some allegedly acting as covert operatives. Although the number of crossings has a decline in 2025, thousands still occur annually. Meanwhile, Indian immigrants face heightened with US immigration crackdowns linked to Trump-era policies. Indian H-1B visa holders, students, and green card recipients, who made up over 70% of H-1B recipients in 2022 to 2023, report discrimination, visa cancellation, and job insecurity, fueling online backlash. In a Senate hearing, Homeland Security Secretary Christine falsely claimed habeas corpus allowed presidential deportation, later correcting herself. A federal judge also criticized the Trump administration for unlawfully deporting 8 South Sudanese migrants, citing due process violations. South Sudan denied involvement, raising concern over secretive deportation practices.